The rain fell like it had something to prove that night. It didn't just soak the earth, it battered it. Heavy Appalachian fog clung low to the trees, thick as wool, the kind of mist that swallowed sound and made men believe in ghosts. Ash Hollow lay quiet, sunken in the hills of Kentucky like a secret too stubborn to die. By 1967, it was a name forgotten by maps and too cursed for sermons. At 68 years old, the man who would later speak of that night was known around those parts as Mr. Ellis. He had lived in Ash Hollow since birth. He was a respected man, a quiet man, a man whose eyes looked like they'd seen a century more than they should have. That night he had left the nearby town of Redgrove late, his mule cart laden with salt, lamp oil, and a worn envelope tucked in his coat money for a man he hadn't seen in years, a debt paid forward. He hadn't meant to linger in town so long. The sun was a weak thing in winter, and by the time he started his return, the sky was already bleeding orange over the ridgeline. The road to Ash Hollow wasn't really a road, more like a path carved into the land by memory and repetition. It wound through woods older than any town, past rusted fence posts, fallen cabins, and hollow. Doubt sycamores that looked like they'd scream if touched. Halfway through, the storm broke. Thunder cracked open the sky like a voice from above, and lightning lit up trees twisted into unnatural shapes. Ellis's mule panicked, bucking once and running off into the woods, the reins dragging in the mud like veins. He called after it, but the wind tore the sound from his mouth, and just like that, he was alone. Completely alone, no light, no map. Just the pitch-black belly of the hollow and the deep, rhythmic sound of water dripping onto wet leaves. That's when he heard its soft footfalls behind him. Not the thud of a boot, no, something lighter. Padded, measured, steady, he turned, squinting into the dark. Nothing, just black upon black. He held his breath and turned forward again. Then came a voice, soft, almost apologetic, like it had been waiting for him to listen. "Don't turn around, just walk, I've got the light." Ellis froze, his heart thumped once, hard, against his ribs, the voice. It was familiar, someone from the town, no doubt. He took a step forward, then another, hands shaking, ears straining. "You know me, Ellis, you helped me once, now I'm helping you." The light appeared behind him, faint at first, like the glow of fireflies gathering in one place, then brighter, a golden lantern glow. He could see his own shadow stretching long in front of him, as if the hollow itself was trying to crawl into his body. Ellis nodded once, throat dry. He walked. The path was slick and narrow, twisting through trees that leaned too close, whispering. The voice behind him stayed silent after that. No footsteps, no sounds, just the warm circle of light always behind him, never beside, never ahead. Sometimes he thought he could hear breath just behind his left shoulder. Sometimes something brushed against the edge of his coat. He dared not speak. He dared not turn. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. In the hollow, time didn't keep honest company. A tree trunk they passed looked familiar, a birch with 3 deep claw marks on its side. Ellis remembered passing it once with his father when he was a boy. Back then, folks told stories of a creature in the woods, something older than man, something that came for those who carried guilt in their chest. The rain let up slightly. Fog slithered back into the hollows and gullies. They were nearing the village edge, he could tell by the scent. Smoke from the cooking hearths, dung and chicken feathers. Life, he could feel it now. Then the voice returned, softer than ever. "I can't go further. You're safe now. But remember, don't look back." Ellis paused. Something about the voice, it shook him, not the words, but the way it sounded, like it was echoing from under the earth. He turned his head slightly, temptation crawling in like rot, but he remembered and he obeyed. He walked forward faster now, until the light behind him vanished. By the time he reached the town square, people were already gathered. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. The air buzzed with whispers, hushed prayers. Someone stepped forward. "Ellis, you came from the hollow." He nodded, unsure what to say. Then, "You don't know." "Know what?" A pause. The woman's voice cracked. "Samuel Avery, he died this morning. Died in Redgrove. His body's in the church right now. Ellis felt the blood drain from his face. His knees buckled slightly. He didn't speak. Didn't move, just stared past the crowd, toward the path he had just taken. Where the lantern light had once glowed, the hollow was now completely black. Something in those woods had walked with him. But it wasn't a man, not anymore. The funeral bell in Ash Hollow only rang twice a year, sometimes 3 if the land was particularly cruel. That week it rang 5 times. The town came out in near silence, not because they didn't care for the dead, but because the dead were starting to care too much for them. Samuel Avery's coffin rested beneath a wax, dripped cross in the crooked church, the windows fogged with breath and storm, slick condensation. The mourners whispered with wide eyes and anxious glances. No one looked directly at Ellis, not yet. He stood just outside the doorway, his boots soaked and splattered with black mud. His shirt stuck to his back. He hadn't said a word since arriving. Inside, Samuel's widow, a frail woman named Ada, sobbed in the arms of her sister. When she saw Ellis through the pane, her face twisted into a mask of confusion and something close to fear. She whispered something to the pastor. The pastor turned and walked toward Ellis with a face carved from stone. "You say you came through the hollow last night." The old preacher said, voice hollow with restraint. Ellis nodded, lost the mule. Rain came sudden. Samuel, walked me home. The preacher's eyes narrowed. "Samuel died at 6 o'clock sharp. You didn't pass Redgrove till well after 8. I know what I saw," Ellis said, or heard, or he didn't finish, because now, with the dawn breaking in slivers across the crooked rooftops of Ash Hollow, doubt had begun its crawl into his bones. He hadn't seen Samuel's face. He only heard the voice. He only saw the lantern. The pastor stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You didn't break the Hollow's law, did you?" Ellis furrowed his brow. "What law? Don't look back. Don't speak its name. Don't forget your debts. This place has its ways, Ellis. You know that. I didn't look back." "You almost did." The silence that followed pressed heavy between them. Ash Hollow had always lived with rules. Unwritten ones passed through generations in murmured stories and cautious warnings. You don't hang laundry after dusk. You don't whistle under a new moon. You don't plant corn deeper than your knee. And above all, you don't look back when you walk through the hollow. They said the path wasn't just a trail, it was a passage. A tether, a wound. The old stories went back to the Civil War. Soldiers buried hastily beneath wet earth. Mothers screaming into empty woods for children who wandered too far. Whole cabins found vacant, steaming food still on the table. Something in the land remembered, they said, and it collected what was owed. That evening, Ellis sat by his fireplace, staring into the flames that refused to warm him. The wind howled outside his window like something was trying to speak through the boards. The church bell had long since stopped. The town had fallen into that familiar hush, but Ellis stayed up, listening. Then came the knock, just once, deliberate, sharp. He opened the door slowly. No one stood there. Only an old object sat on the stoop, a dented tin oil lamp. Samuel's lamp, the same one Ellis had followed through the hollow. He picked it up with trembling hands. It was cold, but as he held it, the wick caught fire all on its own. No match, no flint. The flame hissed once, then settled into a dim, steady glow. Ellis stumbled back inside, clutching the lamp like it might vanish. Over the next few days, things grew stranger. Animals started disappearing. A neighbor's chickens, another's dog. At night, Ellis could swear he saw flickering lights moving slowly in the tree line. Not fireflies, not in that color, not this time of year. Lanterns. Other people began hearing footsteps behind them on lonely walks. A woman claimed she saw her dead brother sitting at the edge of her bed, holding a wet coat and whispering, "You forgot me." Old man Tucker, half blind and a known drunk, screamed through the center of town that the hollow's doors are open now. He was found the next morning, drowned in a puddle not deep enough to cover his mouth. Ellis returned to the preacher. "I think I brought something back with me," he said. The preacher sighed, closing the leather-bound book on his desk, a journal of hollow events dating back over a century. You didn't just walk home that night. The preacher said you were escorted. I didn't ask for that. That's not the Hollow's concern. Why me? Because you owed him. Ellis blinked. What do you mean? You lent Samuel money once for Ada's surgery. He never paid you back, did he? Ellis shook his head slowly. That's the kind of thing the Hollow watches. Debts, vows, promises. They don't disappear with death, here they wait. Why didn't anyone tell me? We all think it won't happen to us, the preacher said. Until it does. Later that night, Ellis sat in bed, the lamp now permanently on his nightstand. The flame burned without oil, without explanation. He stared at it for hours. Somewhere between waking and sleep, he heard the voice again. You still owe one more. His eyes flew open. The lamp was out, but the room wasn't dark. Something outside was glowing. A line of lanterns stretched across the trees, swaying, waiting. And he remembered something his grandfather once said in a whisper, drunk and terrified. The Hollow doesn't take the dead. It takes the living, and leaves the dead to lead them in. The lights kept appearing, always just outside the edge of the forest, always flickering like breath held too long, like candles in a place with no wind. Ellis tried to ignore them at first. He closed his curtains, lit his own lamps. Prayed to a God he'd stopped talking to years ago, but prayers didn't work in Ash Hollow, not after sundown. By the fourth night, Ellis had counted 9 lights, 9 lanterns, 9 watchers in the woods. And they weren't moving anymore. They had stopped stationed, forming a line like a border, as if the Hollow itself had pushed them forward to the very edge of the human world. Then came the dreams. They began with soft whispering wind, low voices speaking through leaves. Then the smell of wet bark, then a hand on his shoulder, heavy and cold, and a voice like cracked stone. You left something unfinished, Ellis. Not 1 debt, 2. He woke up gasping, sweat pooling in the small of his back. That morning, his grandson, Caleb, arrived at his front door invited, smiling, innocent. Caleb was 9, all freckles and boundless energy, and his mother, Ellis's daughter, had sent him down from Louisville for the week while she visited her sister in Ohio. No one asked Ellis. He didn't argue, but as soon as the boy stepped inside, the air changed. The lantern on the shelf sparked. The shadows in the corner stretched, and Ellis's blood ran cold. That night, Caleb stood by the front window and pointed. "Grandpa," he said, "there's people in the trees. Why are they glowing?" Ellis's hands trembled around his tea mug. He set it down. "They're just old spirits," he said. "Do they live out there?" "No." Ellis said too quickly. "No one lives out there." Caleb tilted his head, confused. "Then why are they watching us?" By the 6th night, the dreams changed. No longer were they just whispers. Ellis saw faces now, faces he hadn't seen in years. The Miller boy who drowned in '49, Ruth Chapman, who vanished one September night in 1955 and was never found, his brother Micah, who went off into the woods one afternoon in the spring of 1921 and never returned. They were all there, each one holding a lamp, and each one staring with hollow, sorrowful eyes that said, "We're not done yet." Ellis finally returned to the preacher. "I need answers." The old man looked thinner than before, more afraid. "You've been marked," he said softly. "Once the Hollow has your scent, it doesn't fade. But why my grandson? Because the bloodline carries the debt. If you leave your sins unpaid, the next in line pays. That's the Hollow's law." Ellis stood slowly, fists clenched. "I'll go back in." "You can't. You go back in and you don't come back." "I'll go anyway." He waited until Caleb was asleep, tucked beneath the old patchwork quilt, a carved toy truck by his side. The air in the room was warmer than before, too warm, like something was watching from the vents. Ellis picked up Samuel's lantern. It burned silently, still without oil. The handle was ice cold. He walked out. The woods opened for him like a wound. The trail into the Hollow felt different now, deeper, as if the land had shifted in the night, swallowed more of the old path into its roots. But Ellis remembered it, every bend, every rock. every broken fence post that once guarded the edge of a long, dead farm. After 20 minutes of walking, the lanterns appeared again, this time moving. They didn't follow, they led. They bobbed slowly ahead, never letting him pass them, never getting too close. One by one, they moved between the trees, leading him to the heart of the hollow. That's when he saw it, a clearing, black soil, silent trees leaning inward like they were listening, and in the center, a figure, not Samuel, this thing was taller, dressed in the rags of the Civil War. A tattered coat, mud, covered boots. Its face was masked by shadow, but it held no lantern. Instead, its arms were stretched outward, open like an invitation. Ellis stepped forward. The figure spoke, and the woods shivered. "You were guided, now you guide. What? A life was spared, a path was taken, the balance is broken. I didn't ask for it, but you accepted it." Ellis dropped the lamp. It didn't hit the ground. It hovered, floating upward, then extinguished with a pop that echoed like a gunshot. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet rippled, the shadows came alive, and the figure stepped forward. "Your grandson is marked now, unless you return what was borrowed." In a sudden flash, he understood. Samuel's debt had been paid, but Ellis's had not. The favor Samuel owed was settled by helping him, but Ellis had once made a promise to something else, something buried, something older than Samuel, older than the hollow, older than the church, and it had come to collect. Ellis dropped to his knees. "I'll do it. I'll guide someone. Spare the boy." The figure stepped back into the trees and vanished. The lanterns went out. The woods were silent. When Ellis returned to town, dawn was breaking. He walked back into his house. Caleb was gone. His daughter called from Louisville that morning, panicked, asking why he hadn't been on the bus. Ellis searched the whole town. The neighbors helped. No one saw the boy leave, no tracks, no trace, just a trail of soot across the front porch, and a toy truck sitting in the center of the living room, cracked down the middle. That night, a single lantern appeared outside the trees. Then another, then a third, and a child-sized shadow walking between them. The days blurred after that, not because Ellis didn't remember them, but because remembering them made it worse. No one else saw the lights anymore. Not the preacher, not the neighbors, not even the children, who had once claimed to see people moving through the trees at dusk. Now it was just Ellis, just the old man standing on his porch at twilight, watching the line of lanterns reappear every single night, and in the center of them the smallest one, the shadow of a boy. It didn't speak, it didn't cry, it only stood staring. The sheriff from Clay County came out twice, searched the woods, called in dogs. They found nothing, no clothes, no bones, no signs of struggle, just a single black shoe size, 4 caught in a tangle of briar, untouched by dirt or dew. The preacher visited Ellis again and found him sitting in the same chair, unmoved since dawn. "He's not gone," Ellis whispered. "They have him, but he's not gone." The preacher hesitated. "There are things we weren't meant to understand, Ellis." "I understand now," he said. "They want me to finish the walk." That night, Ellis opened the trapdoor in the floorboards beneath his fireplace. A space he hadn't touched in decades. A box lay buried under ash and soot, his brother's old boots, a canteen, a rusted silver button from a Confederate coat, and a letter. He read it again, Micah's last note before he vanished in 1921. I heard the voice again, down in the ravine, said it could show me where the others went, said I could guide them out if I followed, but only if I didn't look back. If I come back and I'm not alone, don't look at me. Ellis remembered the day Micah disappeared. He was only 12, just a boy. Everyone thought it was bears or a sinkhole, but Grandpa John, the war veteran, had said something strange. That hollow takes what we bury inside us, and if we won't face it, it sends it back in a different form. Ellis looked out the window. The boy-shaped shadow was closer tonight, only 5 feet from the porch. He didn't sleep. Instead, he gathered what he would need: a canteen, a Bible, his father's knife, and the same lantern Samuel had once carried through the dark. But tonight he wouldn't follow the light, he would be the light. The trail was colder than ever, not cold like winter, cold like absence, like something missing from the world entirely. The trees leaned in too close, and the stars above felt too far away. As Ellis walked, the lantern grew heavier in his hand. Then the voice came again, the one he had buried in his mind since childhood. "You remember me, don't you?" It was Micah, older now, cracked with rot. But it was him. Ellis didn't answer. He kept walking. "You left me here all those years ago. You heard me calling and you closed the door. I was a child," Ellis said through gritted teeth. "But you knew, you felt it, yes, and you never came." "No, I didn't." "Then keep walking and don't look back." The wind howled low through the hollow like an old woman crying in a chapel. Ellis's knees ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop, not even when he heard the footsteps behind him. Not even when the sobbing started. Then the other voices joined, dozens of them, children, women, men. They whispered from both sides. They called him by name. "Ellis, come sit with us. You've walked far enough. We're so tired of waiting." Still he kept going. Still he did not look back, until the boy cried out, "Grandpa!" That voice, that tiny, desperate voice. Ellis froze. The shadows behind him thickened. The trees stopped whispering. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. "Please, Grandpa, you said you'd protect me." His hand shook, the lantern flickered, his eyes welled with tears, his knees buckled. "Just one look, that's all I want." He turned, the woods exploded in motion. The lantern burst like glass in a fire, the wind screamed, roots tore from the ground like hands, and in the center of it all, where the boy had stood, there was nothing but a burned patch of grass. He woke up face down in the dirt, the morning sun filtering through branches like bars in a prison. His shirt was torn, blood caked one arm, he could barely move, but in his hand something pulsed the lantern. Lit whole, and inside it not fire, not flame, but an eye watching him. He stumbled home. The town was silent, not empty, but silent. No birds, no dogs barking, no children laughing. He opened his door, dragging the lantern behind him. On the table sat a box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, Caleb's shoe and a note. "You looked. Now he walks for us." The wind changed the next day. It wasn't the usual sharp whip that slid down from the ridge or the damp breath of storm fronts moving over the hills. This wind carried the scent of wet soil and something else, something iron, like, raw and ancient, like the inside of a wound. Ellis knew what it meant. The hollow had opened for good. He hadn't just broken the law, he'd invited it in. The town began to feel it too. First came the sleepwalking. Children woke up in the morning with mud on their feet. Doors were found wide open. Lanterns, untouched for years, flickered to life on porches. Then the livestock began walking in circles until they dropped, eyes wide, bodies rigid, and no one could leave. 3 families packed their belongings and tried to drive west to Red Grove. Their engines died simultaneously 2 miles from the hollow's edge, and the forest had closed behind them like a clenched jaw. They turned back. Ash Hollow wasn't just haunted now, it was held. Ellis stayed indoors. He no longer ventured into the woods. He no longer needed to. The woods were coming to him. The trees had moved. He noticed it first when the oak that had stood at the end of his property was suddenly outside his bedroom window. Then the moss appeared along the interior walls, the smell of damp stone rising from beneath the floorboards. One morning, his living room was full of leaves. He didn't bother to sweep them away. He just sat in his chair holding the lantern. It no longer blinked. It watched. On the 7th day, the boy came back. Caleb, or something that wore Caleb's shape. It knocked twice on the door, calm, gentle. When Ellis opened it, he saw his grandson muddy, clothes torn, his eyes wide and glassy. "Grandpa," he said, voice hollow. "You're supposed to walk with me now." Ellis didn't speak. The boy held out his hand. "I'm scared." A chill ran through Ellis's bones, but something in the boy's face, something familiar and innocent, cracked through the fear. He reached for the hand. Their fingers touched. The lantern ignited in his other hand, and the world changed. They stood again at the hollow's edge, just like before. But this time Ellis wasn't being guided. He was the guide. A second lantern blinked on beside him, a third behind it, then dozens, a corridor of light into the woods. Caleb stepped forward. They're waiting for you. Ellis turned once, looking back toward the town. But it wasn't Ash Hollow anymore, not really. It was a painted memory, still, lifeless, like it had already been buried. They walked in silence, no wind, no birds. The trail grew darker with every step. Trees bent inward, thick with bark that pulsed like breathing skin. The lights behind them went out one by one. Ellis didn't ask where they were going, he already knew. In the clearing, the same place where Samuel had once appeared, there now stood a circle of them. The lamp bearers, all those who had broken the rule, all those who had looked back, who had failed to repay, who had guided someone when they should have kept walking. Micah was there, Ruth Chapman, Samuel Avery. Even the Miller boy, each with a lantern for a heart and nothing in their eyes but ash. The boy stopped. "You can stay here now," he said, "or go back. What happens if I stay? You become one of us. And if I go..." Caleb looked down. "Someone else takes your place." Ellis felt the weight of the world close in around him. He had a choice, maybe for the first time: stay and carry the Hollow's law, or go and let the debt fall on someone new. He closed his eyes, then let go of the boy's hand. The woods didn't rage this time. They sighed as if relieved. The circle stepped back. Caleb's form began to glow not with fire, but with something soft. Rest peace, his eyes closed, and the tightness in his face faded. He was free. Ellis, however, was not. He now walks the trail every night. Sometimes you'll see him if you pass through Kentucky. A man with a crooked back and a lantern that never flickers, standing at the edge of a road that doesn't show up on any map. He won't speak to you, he won't stop you, but if you get lost, truly lost, and call out for help, he'll appear behind you and whisper only once, "Don't look back."